Okay. All right, so continuing, before I introduce Laura, I'm just going to do a little bit of a territorial acknowledgement. So the University of Waterloo acknowledges that much of our work takes place on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Our main campus is situated on the Haldimand Tract, the land promised to the Six Nations that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. So today we're going to be hearing from Laura McShane from the Canadian Mental Health Association of Waterloo, Wellington. Laura is a graduate of the University of Waterloo with a BA in Social Development Studies and a diploma in social work. She's also a certified life coach. Her work experience includes residential work with young offenders, counseling with youth and families, long-term community-based support to people living with mental health issues, and over 15 years experience delivering community and workplace trainings related to mental health and suicide awareness. She is currently the coordinator of mental health promotion and education services for Waterloo region with the Canadian Mental Health Association of Waterloo, Wellington. And Laura, you can take it away.
Thanks very much, Ashley. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. So as Ashley mentioned, I am a former U of W grad and am now with the Canadian Mental Health Association. So we're going to be talking about the importance of maintaining your self-care, especially now when we're so exhausted from being in a pandemic for the past year. I am working from home and have a dog and 2 cats, one of which is a kitten in heat right now. So I'm hoping she's going to be quiet. I have some treats ready to throw at the animals if they start getting rowdy. So I apologize for that in advance. I will be taking myself off screen for the content of the webinar, just so that you can focus on the slides and I can focus on presenting. And then I'll come back on at the end for question and answer. So you can feel free to add any questions that you might have into the Q&A, and then I can take a look at them after we get through the content of the webinar. Okay, so I will see you in a bit. Okay. So when we talk about our mental health, it's really important. Sorry, my slide's not advancing and I'm not sure why. There we go. It's also really important to talk about our physical well-being. And a lot of that physical stuff is that self-care piece that is so important for maintaining good mental health. So let's just take a look at this checklist before we get started. How are you doing so far today? Have you had anything to eat yet? Have you had anything to drink besides coffee or tea? You know, something that will really hydrate you. Have you had your sleep last night? Are you going on 3 or 4 hours of sleep because you've got things to maybe finish up? Did you shower today or even yesterday? Have you at least, you know, washed your face and maybe brushed your teeth so that you're feeling kind of a bit refreshed? How's the space around you? You know, is it getting cluttered with papers and stuff that you're using for schoolwork? Because that's important for our well-being as well. Have you been outside yet today? You know, when we're working on schoolwork, when we're, you know, focused on a task, it's sometimes easy to forget that we're just a door away from, you know, fresh air and sunshine hitting our face, which also is really good for our mental health. How's your to-do list? You know, do you have a list of things that you're mulling over in your head over and over and over that you've got to get done? Writing those down on a piece of paper is a fantastic strategy for self-care, even because then it prevents you, or it helps you not ruminate about all of those things that you need to get done. But also when it's on paper, you can see it, you can prioritize things that you need to do and then cross them off when you're finished. And that is a really good kind of feeling for task completion and, you know, moving forward. And have you talked to somebody? You know, we're exhausted from Zoom chatting and texting and all of that kind of thing. Have you had a conversation? Whether that's a, you know, safe face-to-face with a friend outside or a telephone chat. We need connection as part of our well-being. So all of these personal checks that we've gone through this morning are really the basics of self-care that we're talking about. And we're going to get into why self-care is not, going to the spa and a weekend away and getting, getting all refreshed and rejuvenated kind of thing. That's not real self-care. Self-care is the basic stuff. So the checklist here isn't meant to kind of stress you out or anything like that. It's just a reminder that you have to take care of yourself in those really basic ways in order to have a good day and feel ready to, attend to anything that might come up. 77% of Canadians are relying on saying, "I'm fine, thanks," when people ask us how we're doing, even though most of us aren't really feeling great, right? But as long as we're fine and we convince ourselves of that, we're fine with being lonely. We're fine with disconnection, fine with eating cereal for supper, fine with, showering once a week, working in our pajamas, that kind of thing. And we really need to take care of that basic stuff so that we don't get stuck and that we can continue to just move forward and not give up. 63% of Canadians, that's almost 2/3 of us, are feeling more negative than positive. And maybe some of you can relate to that. This pandemic has really taken its toll on our mental health. Our mental health impacts everything, right? It is not just, mental health is not just the absence of a diagnosis of illness. Mental health impacts how we think, how we feel, how we act, how we cope with challenges, make decisions, how we handle stress, how we feel about ourselves, how we feel about the people around us. So attending to our own well-being through self-care also helps us maintain good mental health. And when we're faced with a bunch of stressors like we are with, school and exams and, off-campus teaching and attending most of your trainings and your lessons by Zoom and not having that connection with each other is an additional stressor on top of the fact that you're working really hard on moving towards graduation and completing your education. So all of these things cause stress, and stress is a normal response to an abnormal situation. Okay, so when stress happens, when the demands that are placed on us, either at work or at school or just in life in general, become out of balance with our resources that we have for coping with them. Okay, so cumulative stress is either stress that occurs one after another, after another, after another, or is just compounded and kind of happening all at once. And then enter COVID-19 and we're dealing with a global pandemic, and that is a huge stressor because life as we know it or knew it has totally changed. And events like this can send us into a place of distress where we may be feeling like we're in a bit of a crisis. And crisis situations can kind of lead to feeling helpless or hopeless or fearful, afraid of moving forward. So this is really why it's important to continue to remain aware of your well-being. So I've got a stress assessment that's coming up on the screen here right now, and I want you to just take a minute and do a quick check of these 20 stressors and or things that impact stress, and just see how you're doing right now. Okay, so I'm going to just give you some quiet time here to read through these and take a mental check. So stress for us is something that changes all the time. Doing this assessment today and then trying it again in 3 months, it might be totally different. But it can be used as an indicator, that it's really time to step up your self-care routine, maybe address some of those things that are stressing you out. But if you scored 18 or higher on this checklist, it really might be time to kind of reach out for some counseling, a connection to a mental health professional in the community, to really talk about, the stressors that are impacting your life and how to help manage them, because we're really not meant to be at that high level of stress on an ongoing basis. It's really unhealthy for us. But we also recognize that taking good care of yourself can be really hard during stressful times, right? But it's that self-care that keeps us well and helps us cope more effectively in the face of stress. So before we take a look at some of the healthy coping mechanisms, we're going to take a look at some of those non-healthy coping strategies that we might use because they work for us to some degree, and they're a heck of a lot easier than, going to the gym or working out after a long day. So isolating ourselves from family and from friends because we don't have the energy to engage, taking risks like gambling or driving too fast just to get that rush of feeling alive, maybe lashing out verbally or physically at family members or your roommate or friends, eating daily drive-through meals so that you don't have to cook and then deal with cleanup on top of the stress that you're already dealing with. Having a drink or 6 to unwind at the end of the day so that you can just kind of numb out, forget everything that's been going on and relax. And then you're going to wake up tomorrow and kind of start that whole process over again. Sometimes people even engage in self-harming behaviors as a means of grounding themselves or coping with the emotional pain that they may have difficulty expressing. So all of these strategies are understandable when we're going through tough times. But the problem is that they cause us to really disconnect from ourselves and from our lives. And as we get older and we don't have our parents kind of telling us, eat a healthy meal, get out and get some exercise, go on outside and, ride your bike, whatever they say to us when we're kids and growing up. As we get older, we're faced with more challenges and temptations in life, choosing our own food, what we eat, using alcohol, tobacco, the opportunity to have a sedentary lifestyle where we're not getting up and being active. And a common result of all of those unhealthy lifestyles include risk of heart attack, stroke, cancer, diabetes, respiratory issues, and that list goes on and on and on. So we can really reduce our risk by adjusting our lifestyle. And the way forward for most of us is to just take some small steps in a more positive direction. So, let's face it, 2020, 2021, certainly has not gone the way most of us has hoped or maybe even planned. Perhaps you had a plan set out for your life, maybe a wedding, maybe a big family reunion or a big gathering at Christmas time. And COVID really kind of threw a curveball at us and prevented us from maybe following through, excuse me, with some of those things that we had planned. But even prior to COVID-19, life can sometimes throw curveballs at us, right? Things go wrong, stressors come up, assignments get missed, lost, the computer shuts down in the middle of something and it hasn't saved. Regardless of what curveballs we're faced with, we can't just cross our fingers, and hope for the best and hope that things are going to work out. We need to be strong enough physically and emotionally to kind of take action to stay well and to move forward. So we can't always control what's going on around us with, COVID-19 and killer Asian hornets coming from, wherever. But we can maintain some sort of control in our daily lives that will help to reduce our stress and enhance our mental health. Okay, so planning ahead, being prepared for things that are coming up in the next week or two, following through with decisions that you make will really help to regain that sense of control. Also, we need to really be aware of the things that we do and do not have control over, right? We need to be aware that a lot of the time our stress and anxiety comes from trying to control things that we really have no control over at all. So we need to be aware of those things that we really can focus on. And to some degree, human beings really like certainty. We're hardwired to want to know what's happening, when it's happening, and we really notice when things feel threatening to us. And when things feel uncertain or when we don't feel safe, a normal reaction to that is stress or feeling anxious. And that very reaction or response is there to protect us, right? Thousands of years ago, we needed to be aware of threats to our life, to our safety, and we still do to some degree. But when we're overwhelmed with feelings of stress, anxiety, it causes that sense of uncertainty and conflicting information that we're associated with and that we're reading can really cause us to not know which way to go or how to best make decisions for what to do next. And again, as I said, a large part of our anxiety comes from a sense of what we think we should be able to control, but we really can't. So maybe the uncertainty over COVID-19 and this new variant and a potential third wave may also connect to you with other times in your life where things felt really uncertain or you didn't feel safe. So in times like that, our mental health can suffer. And when we don't know what's happening, we might feel angry. We're maybe on edge a little bit more often. Maybe you feel helpless, sad, more frustrated. Your load may be, your mood may be really, really low. Maybe you're feeling less motivated to kind of carry out daily routines and activities, getting assignments done, that kind of thing. And I want to talk for a minute about the difference between self-care and coping, okay? Because sometimes people think, okay, well, things are really stressful right now, so I need to engage in some consumer self-care so that I can help myself feel better and cope. And that's not really how it works, okay? So self-care is the stuff that we do every single day to keep ourselves in a state of wellness. Coping, on the other hand, is the stuff that we need to do when we're faced with a situation that we need to deal with right now in the moment. So a good way to think about this is relating it to how you take care of your car. Okay, so what are some of the things that you need to do with a car? Well, we need to get the oil changed, rotate the tires, switch over to snow tires, or maybe get new tires, get new wiper blades, wash our car so it doesn't, fall apart with rust. Make sure that we're getting it in for servicing appointments and oil changes and filling it up with gas, making sure our brakes are working, that kind of thing. And why do we do that? Because they prolong the life of our vehicle. And they can also help so that when something bigger does go wrong with our car, maybe we can get it back on the road faster with less expense, or the impact of whatever's going on won't be as devastating or cause as much damage. So taking care of your car doesn't mean that nothing bad is never going to happen. You can still get into an accident, run out of gas, be driving down the road and, all of a sudden hit a big pothole and now you've got 2 flat front tires and broken rims or bent rims. In that moment, you need to do more than just taking care of your car, right? In that moment, you would be coping both emotionally and with the situation in front of you, right? So then what does coping look like? So coping skills are those things that we need to do in that moment to get us through the immediate hard bits. So for our car, right then and there in that situation, that would mean maybe, how do I get the car off to the side of the road? Maybe then we inspect for damage, call a tow truck, get it to a mechanic, then talk to the mechanic about the things that we need to do immediately in order to get our car back on the road. So self-care and coping in life kind of work a lot like that. When we engage in ongoing self-care, we're making sure that we stay in a place where things are kind of okay, right? For our car, that can include anything from day-to-day stuff like getting gas to the bigger things like buying new rims or new tires. For our mental health, that self-care piece is including like things like paying our bills, doing the laundry. It could mean spending time with friends, or giving yourself permission just to relax for an afternoon and shut off your cell phone and your laptop. All of those kinds of activities contribute to our overall well-being, so that when we are faced with a really difficult situation, we can cope with it more easily, right? So coping is using skills that we need to get through those difficult moments where something's happened and we need to take immediate action. Okay. Maybe that's using a grounding technique, reaching out to a friend or a family member, calling a helpline. Okay, we need to make sure that we're using the right kinds of skills at the right time. So for example, you might enjoy reading for your own self-care. But when you're experiencing a lot of distress, that won't likely be helpful, because it's really hard to concentrate on what you're reading if you're feeling distressed and anxious over something. Okay. So just like, getting the car washed or vacuuming it out isn't going to be the thing that you're going to do when you're sitting in a pothole with two flat tires, right? But then on the other hand, there are things like that we can do in both situations. There's some overlap between self-care and coping. So getting gas is ongoing car care, but if we run out of gas while we're on the road driving, it might also be something that we need to cope with and deal with in that moment. An example for us as individuals and not vehicles would be exercise. So exercise might be part of our self-care routine. It could also be a really good coping strategy if we're feeling distressed, if we've got some pent-up energy, frustration. Getting involved in some physical activity can really help to kind of clear our head and help us think more clearly so that we can cope with those hard bits. So self-care and coping can overlap. We just need to make sure that we're using the right tools and the right skills at the right time. Part of self-care also means recognizing the importance of your feelings and honoring what you're feeling. Okay, those feelings serve as a really important cue about our well-being and about what makes us happy and unhappy. So as I mentioned before, even prior to COVID-19, we were in a lot of ways disconnected from relationships, right? Sending text messages instead of having conversations, maybe isolating yourself because you just don't have the energy to get up and get dressed up and go out for the evening. So even before COVID-19, isolation, disconnection, loneliness already were a major concern for some people. And people with few connections are at higher risk for anxiety, for some of those really unhealthy coping strategies that we talked about, and even for thoughts of suicide. So we need to be connected to ourselves, to other people, so that we can feel like we're a part of something bigger, but also so that we're making our own wellness a priority. A lot of times, especially if we are in a role where we're caregiving, or if you are the helper or the person that your friends go to because you're a good problem solver or you're a good listener, when we're in that helping role a lot, we sometimes forget that we can't continue to pour from an empty cup, right? We take care of everybody else's needs and forget about taking care of our own. And it's really important when we're trying to maintain good mental health that you take that time to refill your cup. Okay. So taking good care of yourself, like I've mentioned, is also so difficult when we're really stressed, but it will help us cope more effectively. Not doing anything, that immobility that we sometimes feel when we're just so overwhelmed that it's just easier to do nothing and take a nap or have a few drinks. That immobility only increases our sense of helplessness and then sometimes leads to hopelessness, right? Which is scary, because if we don't have hope, it's really tough to get out of bed in the morning and keep going. There's a trauma specialist named Bessel van der Kolk, and he talks about the importance of organizing your day by the things that you can actually do. Okay. So right now we're in a global trauma. We need to organize the interior parts of our lives, because our whole exterior structure, what we knew to be normal, has disappeared. So we need to look for little things that we can do every single day to make ourselves feel well. So that's not only organizing and tasks and to-do list, it's also taking time for breaks, to rest, to restore ourselves, to walk barefoot in the grass now that it's starting to show again, and even to just connect with nature and be out in a peaceful and calming atmosphere. So there's an old Chinese proverb that I really like, and it says, it starts off, dig where the ground is soft. Dig where the ground is soft. So when we're talking about self-care and doing small things for yourself every single day to build that resiliency, instead of picking something that's really hard or difficult or something that you've never done before, pick something that you can really easily visualize yourself doing. Okay. That might mean, lighting a favorite scented candle, or preparing your favorite snack to have with your morning coffee. Maybe it's taking a break and having your favorite playlist ready to go, so that you can, the music will lift you up and energize you. Maybe it's going for a short walk, making a commitment to, going for a 5K walk every day might not be realistic, right? So digging where the ground is soft might just mean getting outside and taking a walk around the building that you're in, and entering from, walking around it and re-entering the building from the same door that you left. So that could be a 5-minute walk, depending on the size of the building you're in. So digging where the ground is soft, right? Taking time to plan your day, journaling, getting those feelings out onto paper, brightening up your workspace by having some fresh flowers around you, writing a note to somebody that may be isolated, because that also helps us to feel better. Okay. And our personal resiliency is our bounce back factor, right? It's how, when life throws things at us and knocks us down, we get back up again. And I really like this slide, even though it's a little text heavy, because it really includes those basics of self-care that help us build resiliency. And it's the things that I've already talked about, so I'm not going to go into a whole ton of detail to repeat myself. But these slides have been included in an email to you. So if you want to kind of take a closer look at what each of these categories are, you can do that. Okay. The self-care that we were used to, a year ago, whether that was, getting out to the gym every day, or playing a game of ball hockey with some friends out on the street, or meeting a bunch of friends for lunch at a restaurant, that's all changed. It's now a lot harder to be able to kind of plan those events, right? So that the basics of self-care here are important. And taking some small steps really improves that kind of sense of strength in us when we might otherwise feel helpless. So self-care is really about doing the mundane and boring stuff, like paying our bills, getting groceries for the week, planning out your day, and putting your work away for the evening so that you can have some time to do something that you enjoy. Self-care is about connecting with family and friends, not just through texting or emailing, right? But it's also about doing things like playing a board game, or doing a puzzle, or a crossword puzzle, or a Sudoku, because those less stimulating activities really help our minds to relax, right? It's about taking a pause to kind of reflect, to dance to your favorite song, to stretch, even to stretch your body, to just focus on your breathing. Self-care is also about acknowledging that working from home going to school from home, doing everything at home in your room is different, right? Everything that we're doing seems to all be happening in the same place. So self-care is about taking time to really reflect on what's important and being gentle with yourself. And I really like this slide taken from the International Self-Care Foundation, because it lists the 7 pillars of self-care. Okay, so the first pillar, pillar 1, talks about knowledge and health literacy. And that includes the capacity for us as individuals to kind of obtain, process, and understand just basic health information and the services needed to make appropriate decisions, our health decisions for ourselves. So it's about having the skills to determine motivation that includes gaining access and understanding and using that health information in a way that promotes and maintains good health. The second pillar, our mental well-being, a sense of self-awareness and agency, includes that life satisfaction, a sense of optimism, feeling in control, having a purpose, a sense of belonging, and then a sense of agency, the capacity and intention of us as individuals to take action in really identifying and acting on areas that need improvement in our lives. The third pillar is physical activity, right? Regular, moderate intensity physical activity improves our health, our fitness, and our mood. Healthy eating, is important, as it can mitigate the impact of the risk factors for many chronic diseases and poorer health. Risk avoidance and mitigation, so maybe that might include things like stopping smoking or vaping, limiting your alcohol use, practicing safe sex, driving carefully. Pillar 6, good hygiene. We've all heard a lot about that the last 12 months. It's more than just washing our hands and good hand hygiene right now, though. It's also brushing our teeth and washing our food and focusing on actions and behaviors that contribute to good hygiene and prevent disease and illness. And that 7th pillar is the rational and responsible use of products and services. And that involves, safe and effective management of our health ailments or concerns, perhaps with medication, or maybe with products and services that might include, vitamins, minerals, wellness services, nutrition planning, physical activity, chiropractic, osteopath, massage, acupuncture, smoking cessation programs, and using those products and services correctly. So that means reading directions and following instructions, and also seeking out information if you don't understand something, and then reaching out to your doctor if you've got some concerns. Okay. And the self-care wheel also sums things up really nicely in a visual image, because it takes a look at the whole picture, right? Our physical, psychological, emotional, spiritual, personal, and professional well-being. So self-care is about trying something new, maybe. Or maybe it's about trying something old that you used to do but haven't done in years. It's creating opportunities for fun, for laughter. Maybe it's about saying yes more often, or saying no more often if you're feeling overextended. It's also about limiting our trauma inputs and being deliberate and intentional about what we're watching on the news, on TV, or what we're scrolling through on social media. And I don't know, about you, but I found a lot of the news is regularly COVID-19 information. A year in, and we're still inundated and immersed in COVID-19 information because things are changing. But also, it's kind of made its way into some of our TV programming, and it's all done with the intent to, pay homage to the frontline workers that have been working tirelessly through this pandemic to keep us all well and safe. For example, I really like shows like The Good Doctor and New Amsterdam and Grey's Anatomy, and the 3, Station 19 and Chicago Fire and Chicago Med, all those kinds of high intensity, active TV shows are the ones that I really enjoy. But I found that when the new season started about 2 months ago, and they were coming out with their new programming, The first and second shows, they hadn't taken off from the cliffhangers they left us on back, several months ago. They picked it up and made their TV shows about the pandemic. So people coming into the hospital or requiring medical attention or that kind of thing because of the pandemic and COVID-19, and then showed the difficulty that the doctors and nurses were having and that kind of thing, which is fantastic. But for myself personally, I remember when the first show of The Good Doctor came on back a few months ago, and it ended on a cliffhanger, and I could not wait until it started up again. So it comes on at 10 o'clock on a Monday evening, and I was already in my jammies on the couch under my blanket with a nice cup of tea and a snack. And I just had my whole evening planned out, and I couldn't wait to watch what happened. And within the first 10 minutes, I was like, oh man, and I had to shut it off because they didn't pick up at the end of the cliffhanger. They went somewhere, different and like I said, to paying homage to the folks in the front lines. But I found that it was really weighing me down and making me feel more stressed and unhappy. And so I ended up shutting it off. And I found that I had to do a lot of that as the new season started with the TV shows that I was watching. So it's also about really being aware of how immersed you are in the news and in trauma. So if you're noticing, that information overload is getting really heavy in that department, it's okay to back up for a little while. I've only started getting my COVID-19 news from one source, and that's maybe once or twice a week. So, it's about staying informed so that you can stay healthy, but not immersing yourself in it so that it's the only thing that you're focused on. Okay. Excuse me. So that self-care piece is also about, intentionally noticing when your body is really stiff from sitting at your makeshift workspace, or maybe you're doing some schoolwork, sitting on your bed because you're sick of sitting at your desk. So it's about noticing when you're stiff and when you need to get up and stretch and walk around and take a break. It's also noticing when you're not breathing properly and, taking those little itty bitty breaths to sustain life, but not really oxygenating your blood and your brain. So it's focusing on taking some of those deep breaths really in through your nose and filling your abdomen and your diaphragm and your lungs with oxygen, and then slowly exhaling through your mouth and taking a break that way. It's about doing something different, getting up every 2 hours and doing something. Okay, we need to take those breaks to stay well. Our brains were not meant to sustain working solid for 6 hours at a time. Okay. The other thing that's also really important right now is self-compassion. We are often so hard on ourselves. 75% of the stuff we say to ourselves every day is negative. Why did you do that? You could have done this better. So and so did that better than I ever could, and I just must be not any good. And why am I even doing this to begin with? And then we just get really hard on ourselves. So try being aware of that negative self-talk and really try and take that place of compassion with yourselves that you would have toward your best friend who was maybe struggling in a similar way. Okay. We're not just, working from home and getting your education the way that you normally would. You are living through a global pandemic, a global crisis, away maybe from family, from friends, not knowing when you'll be able to get back there, and trying to get schoolwork, graduation, placements, everything else done through that. Okay. So I really like the following post, the following quote by Brianna Weist. And when I read this for the first time, I thought, oh, that's really neat, because that's what a lot of people think self-care is. So I looked her up and I did a bit of research to see if she had any more information about some of the things that she, that she meant maybe by this quote. So I found an article that I really just want to read excerpts to you from, because it really kind of brings home what we're talking about when we're talking about self-care. So she says, self-care often means looking at your failures and disappointments square in the eye and re-strategizing. It means not satiating your immediate desires. It's letting go. It's choosing new. It's disappointing some people. It's making sacrifices for others. It's living in a way that other people won't, so that maybe you can live in a way that other people can't. It's letting yourself be normal, regular, unexceptional. It's sometimes having a dirty kitchen and deciding your ultimate goal in life isn't going to be having abs and keeping up with others. It's deciding how much of your anxiety comes from not actualizing your own latent potential and how much of it comes from the way you were being trained to think even before you knew what was happening. And if you find yourself having to indulge in consumer self-care, it's because you're actually disconnected from self-care, which has very little to do with treating yourself and a whole lot to do with parenting yourself and making choices for your long-term wellness. It's no longer using your hectic and unreasonably busy life as justification for self-sabotage in the form of liquor and procrastination. It's learning how to stop trying to fix yourself and start taking care of yourself. And maybe finding that taking care lovingly attends to the lot of problems that you were trying to fix in the first place. It means being the hero of your own life and not the victim. It means rewiring what you have until your everyday life isn't something that you need to recover from. It's no longer choosing a life that looks good over a life that feels good. Self-care is often a very unbeautiful thing. It's making a spreadsheet of your debt and enforcing a morning routine, cooking yourself healthy meals, and no longer running from your problems and calling the distraction a solution. It's often doing the ugliest thing that you have to do, like sweat through another workout or tell a toxic friend you don't want to see them anymore, or get a second job so that you can have a savings account, or figuring out a way to accept yourself so that you're not constantly exhausted from trying to be everything all the time and then needing to take deliberate, mandated breaks from living to do simple and basic things like drop some oil into a bath and read a magazine or turn your phone off for the day. She says a world in which self-care has to be such a trendy topic is a world that is sick. Self-care should not be something that we resort to because we are so absolutely exhausted that we need some reprieve from our own relentless internal pressure. True self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It's making the choice to build a life that you don't need to regularly escape from. And that often takes doing the thing that you least want to do. It's giving up on some goals so that you can care about others. It's being honest, even if that means you're not universally liked. It's meeting your own needs so that you aren't anxious and dependent on other people. Self-care is about becoming the person that you know you want and are meant to be. Someone who knows that salt baths and chocolate cake are ways to enjoy life and not escape from it. So I want to just spend a few minutes talking about some resources that are available in the community and throughout Ontario before I jump on and answer any questions that there might be. Okay, so there's a program called Bounce Back. It's an initiative of the Canadian Mental Health Association Ontario Division. And it is a free self-help and guided self-help CBT program based in CBT for youth and adults age 15 and over to learn skills that help manage low mood, mild to moderate depression, anxiety, stress, or worry. So there's two forms of support. There's skill building workbooks and telephone coaching, or you can just get online and watch some videos with some practical tips. So the website is down there at the bottom. And like I said, these slides will be included in your email. Here in Waterloo, Wellington, we also have a local service that is called Here 24/7. It is our local crisis service. So 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, you can call this number and somebody will pick up the phone. So if you or somebody that you are with is having a mental health crisis, maybe thoughts of suicide and isn't safe at that time, call Here 24/7 and they can help you out. But it's more than just a crisis service. It is also the kind of access point and referral for mental health and addiction supports throughout Waterloo, Wellington. Okay, so it's kind of like one-stop shopping where you can call this number and explain your story, talk about what's going on, and then not have to repeat it and repeat it and repeat it before you get directed to the proper help. You can also visit us online at cmhaww.ca. We have developed a site called Here for Help in response to COVID-19, which has a lot of great information for all age categories on maintaining health and wellness and COVID-19 information and good mental health. I've also listed some online resources. There's a lot of information, as I'm sure you're aware, online that is not accurate. These websites are all very good mental health resources and organizations. The second to last one is the International Self-Care Foundation. So that's a great one to look at more self-care. The very bottom one, Wellness Together Canada, is a new initiative by the Canadian government that only came out about 2 weeks ago now. So it's called Wellness Together Canada, and it was designed to help meet the mental health needs of people throughout Canada, because we are struggling with our mental health due to this pandemic and being in it for a year. Okay. There's also some apps that you can download on your cell phones or tablets. Stop, Breathe, Think is a great one for kind of calming some anxious thoughts and reminding you to breathe, to kind of regain your ability to think clearly. Insight Timer, I've heard so many great things about this one. It's podcasts and meditations and activities and that kind of thing. And if you've only got 5 minutes, there's a variety of 5-minute options. And if you've got a whole hour, there's a variety of those as well. Down Dog is a yoga app. Headspace, Breathe meditation spelt incorrectly on purpose are both very helpful. There's a gratitude journal. Practicing gratitude transforms our brain. Okay, when when things are difficult around us, it's really easy to kind of stay focused on what's negative, right? And everything that we've lost and everything that's gone wrong. But when we practice gratitude, a shot of dopamine gets released in our brain. Okay, and dopamine is our body's feel-good chemical. So if you can remember a time where you have been laughing so hard that tears have been streaming down your face, maybe like me, you're a snorter when you laugh really hard. But if you can remember how that felt and how euphoric you felt, that's because dopamine was firing in your brain, and that feels really good. So we can get more dopamine firing just through the act of practicing gratitude. So that means just noticing things around you that you're thankful for and expressing that either through a gratitude journal on your phone or just by saying it out loud. I'm grateful for this warm cup of coffee in front of me. Or I'm grateful for that little ray of sun that is shining through my window, because I know when I poke myself outside in a few minutes, when I'm done here, I'll be able to feel the warmth on my face. Maybe it's writing what you're grateful for down on a Post-it note and sticking it on your wall in your dorm room or in your dining room or wherever you hang out, on your bathroom mirror. And then for those moments when you're feeling, low, You can take a look at all of the things in your life that you have to be grateful for. And even the simple act of practicing first thing in the morning, something that you're grateful for when you wake up, and then the last thing at night before you go to bed, something that happened during the day that you were grateful for. Within 21 days, you will notice a significant improvement in your mood. I was listening to a podcast by Wayne Dyer, and he was talking about how prior to going to sleep at the end of the day, the last 5 minutes of our wakefulness is spent ruminating about everything that went wrong in our day. And he said, and all we're doing by thinking about everything that went wrong before we fall asleep is setting ourselves up to have a lousy night's sleep. And we're setting ourselves up to wake up kind of grumpy tomorrow morning. So he said that just simply by switching that from thinking about everything that went wrong for 5 minutes to thinking about all the good that happened for 5 minutes as you're falling asleep, you will set yourself up for a better night's sleep and program your subconscious mind to wake up happier and have a more restful sleep. Okay. There's an online app called 10% Happier. And, we can all afford that, right? And then again, calm.com. So these are some really great resources that you can take a look at. If you have questions for me directly, you can email me after the webinar if you'd like at McShane@CMHA-UW.ca. And if you want workplace education, you can email education at the same CMHA-UW.ca. So I want to thank you for joining us today to talk about self-care, and I will bring myself back on screen so that we can take a look and see if there's any questions that have come through the Q&A or any comments.
If any participants have any questions that you would like to ask, feel free to do so now. You can do so in the chat function or in the Q&A function. So we'll give it some time so that students can put their questions in. Thank you so much, Laura, for that presentation. There's a lot of valuable information in there, especially with like the discussion of the difference between self-care and coping, and all the different ways that our mental health can be impacted.
Good, thank you. I hope it met everybody's needs, and I hope that at least everybody has kind of thought about one thing that they can do a little bit differently to just make your self-care a priority. You're the only you that you have, and we have to take care of ourselves to get through this, but also to just enjoy our life, right?
Yeah, exactly. And when you're talking about the TV show, I totally relate to that as well. That to me, sometimes I'm like, oh, it seems so silly that I'm impacted by this, but it definitely makes sense that everything can have such an impact, especially when you have so much invested in that something that you enjoy, and then it doesn't go the way that you were hoping and you've been waiting for so long for it to happen.
Do you watch The Good Doctor?
No, but I watched some other shows that kind of did similar things.
Yeah, there was a cliff, and I never did find out what happened. I think I might have missed the episode that finally went back to that episode, so I may need to do some searching to find it online.
Do some research, hunt it down. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of questions coming through.
There is a question.
There is a chat.
When is a good time to start practicing self-care? Can it ever be too late?
No, absolutely not. There's no time like the present. This was supposed to be an hour webinar, and we've all got 5 minutes. So pick something. There were two posters there about, how to take a break and self-care, and it's really simple stuff. So just do one thing and dig where the ground is soft, right? Don't make it something that you really can't see yourself doing. For example, for me, I know that I need to get more physical activity into my day because I do a lot of sitting at my laptop doing webinars. And so making a commitment to get up and work out for an hour on my lunch break, I know is not going to happen. But I can commit to maybe walking the dog to the corner and back on a 5-minute break twice a day, So just simple things like that. What advice can you give to someone who doesn't understand that you're practicing self-care? It can be a use of time and energy to others that don't understand. Yeah. It's funny because I do a compassion fatigue or empathic strain vicarious trauma webinar for folks that work in the helping field. And sometimes, when we're exhausted and depleted and we're tired because we're, trying, pushing out paperwork or trying to get our thesis finished, or, all the kind of schoolwork and prep for exams and all that stuff that we're trying to do. And then we notice somebody else maybe in the dorm or outside walking, and they're in your class, and you notice them eating ice cream, laughing their head off, or taking a break at the water cooler and eating lunch in the caf and having conversations with somebody, and we look at them as if must be nice. I don't know how you've got time to do that, because you're in the same course as I do, and I certainly don't have time for that. So must be nice. You clearly don't take your work as seriously as I do. And we make all these excuses in our head for why we're not taking care of ourselves, when really those people that are sitting down having lunch together or taking time to go for a walk and eat an ice cream outside in the nice weather are engaging in self-care, right? So the advice is just basically, my bucket is empty and I need to refill it. And that's what I'm doing. I'm exhausted, I'm depleted, and I deserve 15 minutes of me time a couple times a day to improve my well-being. And if other people don't understand it, well then, they're probably the people that need it the most, right? So you don't owe anybody an explanation, right? It's your life. You do what you do to keep yourself well and mentally healthy and in balance, and not overly stressed. So they don't need a long explanation. Just, I'm engaging in self-care because it's important to me.
Thank you for that response. I totally agree, especially with the not owing anyone an explanation for taking care of yourself. That really resonates.
Yeah.
I guess if there are no other questions, I guess we'll start wrapping things up. So again, thank you so much, Laura. And thank you so much to everyone who made the time to come out to this session. Something that I should have mentioned at the beginning is this event was hosted by the Graduate Student Association, and it's part of a larger lineup of events that are happening this week for our Wellness Week. So one of the things that are happening is a virtual wellness wall where you can talk about your reflections on wellness or things that you like to do to keep well. And then tomorrow we have a family-friendly cooking lesson that we have lined up. And then on Friday, we have a message from a surprise guest. So stay tuned to our social media accounts. And if you want to join in on one of those other events, make sure check out the more information on our website or Instagram, Facebook, any of those. So again, thank you, Laura, and I hope you all have a good rest of your day.
Thanks very much, Ashley and Cindy. Take care, everybody.